Good morning, Bucknutters. It is Thursday. Thursday, August 24th, 2023. I am Dan Rubin. This is the Bucknuts Morning 5 and Change. Got a great show for you today, featuring the lovely and talented Bill Kurlick and Mark Porter. But first, this show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Sometimes in life, we're faced with tough choices, and the path forward isn't always clear. I am dealing with this myself. Dealing with some strong emotions. My daughter is going away to college today. I'm already having separation anxiety, and you can't tell my eyes have been watery. But whether you're dealing with decisions around career, relationships, or anything else, therapy helps you stay connected to what you really want while you navigate life so you can move forward with confidence and excitement. Trusting yourself to make decisions that align with your values is like anything. The more you practice, the easier it gets. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suitable to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Let therapy be your map with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/bucknuts today to get 10% off your first month. As you can see on the bottom of the screen there. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Bucknuts. Again, this episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. And I will now welcome in my compadres for a Thursday. Gentlemen, Bill, you stole my line when you went national. I said the site would crash if we did not get Edric Houston. You brought it up on the national broadcast, and she even quoted you, but thank the Lord, we live. Edric Houston is a Buckeye. I really don't even know what would have happened had we not received his commitment. Bill, take us through that day. I got a text from you, I'd say midday, saying it does feel like all systems go. And as it turns out, I can't give the full part of the story, but it does seem like Edric Houston was a Buckeye for several months, Bill.
Yeah. When he made his official visit, he told me it was a 10 out of 10. But there was more behind the story than that. You know, basically, he had made a decision at that point that he was going to be a Buckeye. And he said that. We had Benjamin Wolk from our Georgia site at the announcement, and we had kind of an exclusive interview with Edric that Benjamin did right after he committed. And he said that basically he knew he had made his decision when he made the official visit to Ohio State. And that's exactly what happened. Now, sometimes they make that decision and it doesn't follow. They don't go all the way through with it. Edric did. You know, he did make other visits. As he put it, he said he was making those other visits to schools just to make 100% sure of his decision. And when he made those other visits, he knew that his original decision to be a Buckeye was the right one. And reminded me a little bit of the Jim Tressel days. You know, Tressel would say, you know, go ahead, make your other visits. It's only going to show that Ohio State is the place for you when you make those other visits. And that's exactly what happened with Edric. He visited Alabama, for instance, but he still knew Ohio State was the place for him.
Mark, we did an evaluation of Edric Houston a little while back based on his film prior to the beginning of this season, which just kicked off. And I'm not saying he improved a tremendous amount. He just was kind of blossomed, I would say. He was so impressive on tape the other night. We talked about this ad nauseum, or at length at least, on the last show. He's pretty much your prototypical strong side defensive end. If you go look at guys who have had tremendous sack seasons, go look at who was the other end. And it usually has a big part of it because you can't run at the guy. There are certain guys who are just really good at everything. They can set the edge. The beauty of Edric Houston, if you watch the highlights or watching that game, your biggest guy came at him, he could handle him. Your smallest guy went with him, he could run with him. So he's just one of those really big, strong, big guys that you need to win football games. When you went back and did the tape, and it's been real popular out there, what has been the change that you saw, and how would you project him Buckeye-wise?
Yeah, don't be afraid to say that he improved. That's all Bill and I really talk about in this podcast is we go to a camp and say, wow, I can't believe how Luke Montgomery, how much different he looks 1 year ago. I can't believe how much different Arvell Reese looks from 1 year ago. And that's what we're in the business of. So sometimes well, I think what you say is like, oh, we thought he was really good as a junior. Now what do we say if he's even better than that? Like, we already put him in the stratosphere. How do we go above the stratosphere?
Right.
And I think like, you're like, wow, we already had him as a 5-star. How could he get better than a 5-star, or that type of mentality? But I think when these kids get ratings as early, they're projected to keep progressing to what we're seeing. And that's exactly what he's doing. He's adding that 10 or 15% progression that you should get from every junior year to senior year. Even if you're a 5'10", 145-pound guard, you're going to get 10, 15% better, hopefully in a year at that age, with the growing and lifting and stuff. So, yeah, last year we put on the tape. And if you would have said to me, this kid is going to move to defensive tackle someday, I'd say, okay, I could see that. He's got some end qualities. He moves pretty well. He's at end right now, but boy, he's really big and powerful. So that's why you thought maybe inside. But that whole narrative has been destroyed by his senior film. And just scrimmage film I broke down, I believe, in his first game, the athleticism is showing up. And as we're seeing in the comments from the video, he was the anchor on the 100-meter team at 260 pounds. Great and everything, but aren't there any 170-pounders at that school that can run? It seemed like a pretty big high school. You got to go to the big guy to bring it in for you. So this compliments to him to be able to do that. But you see that athletic ability, and you said it, Dan. One play, he's running the edge for bubble and sweep, and he's running with the tailback. The next play, he's slamming into a 280-pound guard and blowing him up. I mean, he bull rushes through one of the bigger guards there. The kid's a little sloppy fat a little bit, but he's a big man, and he just runs right through him and blows him up. So you see the power inside, you see the speed. And when you talk about rare skill sets, that tackle skill set's rare, but this defensive end of the strong side, that is the tough skill set to find, the power and the speed. The backside end, he's just flying off the edge. He's all speed. Right. He's all, jets in his shoes. This guy's got to do both. So it's a unique skill set. When you find guys like this, it's really great. And there'll be a lot of things he can do down the road, whether he kicks inside on passing downs. And you said another thing. I was a former defensive end, and nothing more frustrating when you come around the edge free and your buddy on the other side lets the quarterback break contain the other way, and the quarterback flushes, and there goes your sack because you won on your pass rush move.
Right.
If both of you guys are containing and that other guy's got containing, there is no flush, your sack total goes through the roof, your buddy's sack total goes through the roof, and you really work in tandem.
I tell you what, now that I think about it, he reminds me a little bit of what Jayshon Cornell was supposed to be. I don't know if you remember him, Bill. We had 5-star Tuesday one time. I think it was Jayshon Cornell, and good Lord,
from Minnesota.
He was from Minnesota. Who was the middle linebacker from St. X? Justin
Hilliard.
Boom.
Yep.
Those two committed on the same day. It was great. And Jayshon Cornell, I think we thought was going to be a little bit more. He ended up having a nice career here and getting on the field his last couple of years and playing in the pros, but kind of that almost a 5 technique in the 3-4 you could play him at. He could grow into that. And I do think he's strong enough and has been asked to do enough at Buford that he is the kind of guy you could slide down into a Rushman package. You know what I mean? We forget this. He's playing at about the highest level of high school football you could play at right now. So if you're looking for high school to be the real determination of how they do in college, that's about as accurate a flip as you can get, relatively speaking. Go ahead, Bill.
And I talked to several people that I think are very savvy, good evaluators. Have seen a lot of high school football. They were at Buford's first game of the season this past weekend. They raved about Edric Houston. They had seen him before, but they raved about how much, as Mark said, we've talked a lot about improvement, how much he's improved and just how good he is. I saw somebody's comment on this podcast. He's the real deal, and I would absolutely agree with that.
Yeah, Andrew Ivins, director of scouting, almost like director of scouting for 24/7 Sports. So was at least partially responsible for giving him the 5-star status, was at the game the other night and said it's the best he's ever seen him look. So if you're already a 5-star and you look better than you've ever looked, that certainly bodes well. Mark?
Yeah, and if you talk about more improvement, he says that he's 260, 270 now. If we think about some of the really good strong side ends like a Will Smith in the past or a Cam Hayward, those guys started pushing that 290-pound barrier, but kept that speed. And, that really turned into the NFL stars that they are. But the Bosa's, Chase Young was more of a backside end, but that strong side end prototype, boy, if he could add that extra weight, the improvement we may be blown away with over the next couple of years. But Bill and I may see him at camp and say, oh my gosh, he's 285 right now. Get ready. That's really, it's hard to run. Tight ends have a tough time blocking guys that are that weight, 280, 290. Even if you're a 260-pound tight end, and that's on the outer edge of blocking tight ends, that's tough. You almost have to handle that guy with the tackle, and it's a lot on the edge for the strong side. So if he could really blow up as he gets to college.
Yeah, I definitely see, if you look at him, he looks like a guy that can carry 280 and be pretty spry. I think it's actually the 4x400 that he's the anchor on, which, by the way, is more impressive because I've told you this. If I was working for the Navy SEALs, I would just camp at the 4x400 finish line and just interview dudes because I ran track. The 400 is torture. I'm not kidding you. Training for it and running it is literally torture. So that's impressive. And he's also a wrestler. Let's just throw that in there. He's a bad A. That's one thing's for sure. Speaking of another conference that plays a high level of football and athletics across the board, back to my stomp, the WCAC, the Washington Catholic Athletic Conference. We talked about the schools in there the other day. One school we did not discuss was St. John's Military. No one knows that it's a military school, but it is. They wear military garb. And Jordan Seaton goes to school there. Bill, at one point in time, I thought, based on our conversations, and we do a good job in DC, I really thought Jordan Seaton was going to be a Buckeye. Then there was a parting of the ways of some sort, and now he's back in the mix. He has transferred. He's no longer in DC. Shocker, that made him more attractive. I think he's at IMG. Bill, give us the latest, and then we'll break it all down.
Yeah, Jordan Seaton is, in one word, elite. I mean, he's another guy, you talk about the real deal. He is elite. Never a question about talent, ability. Could play guard, tackle. With his size, 6'5", 295, a pretty good wingspan and all, and his ability, he would be a great topper for this class on the offensive line. And the Buckeyes are back in the running. As you mentioned, he transferred to IMG. People were wondering where he was going to resurface and all. Well, that's a pretty talented roster that he resurfaced at. As far as where he's going to end up from there, that's a tough call. If you'd asked me, 5-6 months ago, I would have said Ohio State would be, if not the leader, certainly one of the couple leaders. At this point, though, he's in Florida. Florida, the Gators, they're going to be a contender there. He will make an official visit there. People may not want to hear this, but South Carolina is going to be a contender for Jordan Seaton.
DC now.
Alabama, he's already made. That's the one official visit he's made so far. He's going to make his others this season. And he's going to take official visits. If some of our listeners don't know, because they have asked me about this, how can some of these guys talk about making 6 or 7 official visits? It's because official visits are unlimited now. And Jordan Seaton is talking about making 6 or 7 official visits. So I expect, in addition to the Alabama one, and he's going to get back there too for an unofficial visit, he's going to make official visits to Florida. September 15th, he'll make that visit. He's going to go to South Carolina in mid-November for an official visit. He's going to be at Ohio State for an official visit. Perhaps the Maryland game. That's a very realistic possibility. He has not 100% confirmed that is the date, but I think that will be the date. But he has said he'll make an official visit. He's looking at 6 or 7 official visits, so it's going to be an interesting ride with him. But I think Ohio State is at least in his top few schools at this point.
I'll tell you what, I wouldn't be surprised if Jordan Seaton is a Buckeye. I just got a vibe on that one. We shall see. Obviously, the move to IMG affects everything, but we shall see. All right, we're going to take a quick break here. I'm going to let you know that we have another sponsor, and we're thrilled about AG1, a foundational nutrition supplement delivers comprehensive nutrients to support whole body health. AG1 is raising the standard for quality in the supplement category. It replaces your multivitamin, probiotic, and more in one simple drinkable habit, creating a manageable daily habit. That's the key. All great athletes have one thing in common. They take care of their bodies. Believe me, this is true. Good Lord. And a huge part of that starts with optimizing whole body health. AG1 is raising the standard for quality in the supplement category. If a comprehensive solution is what you need from your supplement routine, then try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase. Go to drinkag1.com/Bucknuts. That's drinkag1.com/Bucknuts. Check it out. And if you see on the board here, I've got that running. So those of you who want to take advantage of it, you can see it running on the bottom. Now, Bill, Jordan Seaton is a big-time offensive lineman. The other offensive lineman Ohio State is ostensibly in the mix for is Brandon Baker. There was a point in time I felt very confident about this. I no longer feel that confidence, Bill. I have a boarding house item coming on this later today, so I'm not going to give away everything. But can you give us the latest on Brandon Baker? Offensive lineman out of modern day, obviously #1 ranked offensive lineman in the country, and very good player, obviously. Bill, go ahead.
Yeah, Ohio State's big focus right now, their biggest recruiting focus right now is getting another offensive lineman, getting an elite offensive tackle. They've got what I think are 2 really, really good offensive tackles in the class right now. Ian Moore, who is going to play tackle. He's slotted as a tackle for the Buckeyes. And Deontay Armstrong, who had the Pancake Fest last weekend. Those are the 2 tackles in the class right now, and they're both very good. They would love more than anything to top it off with one of these other 2 offensive tackles, either Brandon Baker or Jordan Seaton. And I would agree with you. If you'd asked me a few weeks ago, which one was more likely to be a Buckeye, I would have gone with Brandon Baker. He is looking at 4 schools highly right now. One of them is Ohio State. One of them is Texas, who is trending with him right now. You've got Nebraska, and I still think Oregon's a factor there. He's been there many times. But right now, I think that I would take the field versus Ohio State for Brandon Baker. With Seton, like I said, it's not going to be easy. He's going to make official visits. He's going to run to Alabama. He's going to make them to Florida, Oklahoma, South Carolina, Ohio State, probably at least 1 or 2 more than that. But I might give Ohio State, if I had to pick one of the 2 right now, I'd probably give Ohio State the best chance of the 2 with Jordan Seaton at this point.
Yeah,
a lot based on the previous relationship when I felt Ohio State had the best position.
Agreed. That's completely echoes my vibe. And when Dean echoes your vibe, you feel smart. Mark, how about 30 seconds on Brandon Baker, because it's going to be depressing. And then whoever else in Ohio you think has a chance, if there is a guy in Ohio who you think this year could blossom as a senior maybe and snag an offer on the offensive line. Maybe there isn't anybody.
Yeah, I don't want to do 30 seconds on Brandon Baker because I was in love with him. And if I have to break up with him, I don't want to talk about how much I liked him. It's really, he really.
I watched the game the other night. He was doing stuff when he's moving with his kick step and his feet when he was pulling that he looked like he was a dancer. I almost started crying.
Yeah, and like, like I'm always like, let's quit comparing guys to the best in the NFL, and he's one of those guys that would be at the top of the. Yeah, he really was that good, is that good. Would love to have him. Would love to see some NIL money come in and sweep him off his feet and bring him here. He'd be worth it. And as you get into this NIL landscape, and I'm thinking about Brandon Baker, I could sit with his film in front of a bunch of millionaires and say, listen, this is about as a sure thing as you're going to get coming out of high school to go be an NFL guy. Of all the 5 stars, if we watched all the 5 stars, I'd say, yeah, a lot of them are pretty safe bets. But boy, you're going to go put your money on a kid, then you're going to go bet on someone. You could have some of my money right now for him. That's how good I think it is, barring injury, the world blowing up. So that's what we're losing. Now, when we come back to Ohio, we kicked a lot of stones in Ohio last year with offensive linemen Satterfield and Roebuck, and there's the twins down at CHCA. There's a lot of good-looking bodies in Ohio, so if we did have to revisit, but I know there's national linemen out there still. I'm not, thinking that Brandon Baker is the end-all, be-all. I just don't know. Like Bill said, there might be a guy he's talking about right now we just heard about. The Ohio guys, if they wanted them, I think they would have fired. And the ship may have sailed on some of these kids because they're committing other places. Roebuck's at Michigan. And what if he did have a great senior year? It'd be pretty hard to pull him away at this point. And same with Luke Hamilton. I mean, Luke Hamilton was he could say he was offended on Twitter. He's went straight to work for Michigan and said, okay, you don't want me, then I'm bringing every Ohio kid I can get up here. And it kind of, it's hard to pull those guys back in. So those would be some of the top names. But, we'll see in Ohio. So it's not like the door's closed, but you see the landscape has been set kind of.
And listen, the beauty of Ohio State is he could be in Germany. He could be in Dubuque, Iowa. He could be in we started working the Dakotas recently again. So if there's a guy that blossoms this year into Ohio State caliber, they'll be on him. Don't worry about that. Mike Horsley has a question, Bill. Are there any more safeties on the board? And I assume he means class of 24.
Yeah. I mentioned the offensive line as being the number one priority right now to get one more offensive lineman. They also want another safety in the class. They absolutely want a safety in the class. Zaquan Patterson is announcing on Saturday. I don't anticipate that one going Ohio State's way on Saturday. He says he's still going to make an official visit to other schools after he makes a commitment, so we'll see. But right now, I think that the Ohio State staff is going to monitor things, evaluate, and look at guys as they go through this season, specifically the first 3, 4, 5 games, and look and see who they can double back on and possibly flip. I think that's more likely than them finding somebody that's uncommitted that they think is a player that is Ohio State caliber. I think the more likely situation would be for them to see who they can flip as we go through this season, but they're still going to go after safeties. It's just that right now, the one guy that had emerged was Zaquan Patterson, and after him, nobody else has emerged yet.
Boy, modern day, dude. Do they have any talent on that team? Good Lord. We haven't even talked. Ohio State's not even in on the top-rated player on the team, defensive tackle Aiden Breland, who is the real deal Holyfield. Question here. I'm going to like this one. Bill's going to like this one too. If it works. Come on. Dreamtime relaxation, sleep. Look at that. I could use that. As you get older, this is just news for all you younger gentlemen on here. Sleeping is impossible. Mr. GP, and by that I mean Grand Poobah Porter. What camps should an 8th grader in Ohio aspire to attend if wanting to get noticed? You have stepped into, this is like a 3-1 fastball to Mike Trout when he's actually healthy against the pitcher he owns. Turn on it, boy.
Yeah, this is right up my alley. And Bill, I've never seen him so happy that this Grand Poobah is sticking. I mean, every time someone puts it up, You know what kind of bothers me is there's so many cool nicknames out there, like the Dean or the Captain. I mean, there's just great, and the reason Pooba is still available is because nobody wanted it, really. It was just a name that's been out there for ages, and no one ever.
There's a cartoon character associated with it somewhere along the
Yeah,
line.
there is. There's so many different associations now that I've Googled it once or twice. But yeah, Bill, he's like giddy when these things come up, and so yes, this question is right in my ballpark. The first thing I'll say is 8th grade's too soon to get noticed. Okay, if you have recruiting aspirations in 6th, 7th, or 8th grade, you're doing it wrong. Okay, that's a developmental stage that's largely about fun and in your friends and playing on a team, and you're going to get better, and there's going to be great changes from year to year because of puberty and other things that are going on. But the quarterback position is unique. I happen to have some quarterbacks that I know that are that age, and it's about getting them to camps, quite frankly, but not from the recruiting standpoint. You know, I take my kids to a lot of throwing sessions and college camps, and to get the reps and they get the experience. And, you know, sometimes when you go to some of these camps, you get receivers that are in high school for your 8th grader to throw with, and the game moves really fast for them. But then when they leave that situation and they go back to their real field, it moves really slow for them. So there's a lot of things you're doing at that age to develop, not necessarily recruiting. And the reason I say that about recruiting is I don't look at kids until they play on a varsity football field. It's kind of like the day that I'll say, okay, now you can talk to me about recruiting. Show me your varsity film and we'll start talking. And when all these things you did prior to that are things that lead up to how you're going to look that day. So, you know, I don't like to use the word recruiting for 8th grade. Like, how do you, but there are going to be a ton of, I'll say there's 2 types of camps for you. Developmental camps where you're going to go there for maybe 2 or 3 days at Ohio State and stay overnight and work out all day. And maybe they'll watch film and take you in the classroom. And those are nice. Those will teach you a lot. And then there's other like 1-day testers that are the recruiting camps, but you can go to those. I see a lot of kids at Ohio State's camp that have no chance for a scholarship from anybody. They're just there to go get 200 or 300 reps against some quality competition. It's a $40 or $50 camp or whatever. It's a great practice. It's a great way to see where the bar is. I tell kids a lot of time, look who gets the scholarship that day. See what qualities they had. When you come back a year later, 3 years later, that's the bar you're striving for. It kind of opens your eyes as to what's out there. Fathers and kids, sometimes dads go to these camps and they say, oh, I thought my kid was the best player in town, and they're not even looking at him at this camp, or, he doesn't fit in as well as I thought. So 8th graders, raw talent has some Friday night camps. Okay. There's a quarterback trainer in Twinsburg. Brad Melander is a quarterback trainer. Jim Ballard's been running quarterback schools for 20 or 30 years out of the Canton area. Air It Out Inc. down there. They have weekly sessions for kids. This is the longest answer ever. This guy's really getting what he wanted. But there's a lot of up in Toledo, there's 4th and Goal. In Columbus, there's places to go where there's quarterback guys. Like, I should give them all a shout out, because they're all working with kids and they've all developed stars and college quarterbacks. But that's the route I'd go. I would look and put my money into reps and development until you're on the varsity field. Then you can start sending those films to the recruiting sites and the college coaches. But right now, I'd say work in the dark, because a lot of what's going on in 8th grade is really impressive at the time. But when you look back, you're like, it wasn't such a big deal when you thought it was. So there's the long answer I'm sure that person was hoping for.
Right. Real quick, Dan, good point to back up what Mark's saying about he doesn't look at kids till they have some varsity film. Ryan Day's son,
I knew it.
Great example. He did exactly what Mark said to do. Ryan Day's son went to camps. He went to the high state camps. He was there every single one of them, I believe, this summer. When I went up to the Elite 11 regional in Massillon, I think that was in February or March. Ryan Day was there with RJ Day, who was at that time a quarterback heading into his 9th grade year. So he went to all those camps, did all those things. Then, lo and behold, for Columbus DeSales, the first game of this season as a freshman, he got into the game and played very well. And I'm talking about the varsity DeSales game, played very well. And lo and behold, Boston College and Jeff Halfley offered him a scholarship, his first offer.
It's nice to have connections, Bill.
You know, and let's go one step further with that. Let's thank Ryan Day because of what he did. And if you don't know what he did, he kind of identified what I was going through with young quarterbacks where, what do you mean Ohio State doesn't allow these kids to do flag football and 7-on-7s in the summer and almost kneecaps them and prevents them from getting quality reps? And I know we didn't want AAU football to pop up in the summer, but from May 15th to July 31st, Ryan Day got the Ohio Coaches Association to vote it in that you can now do flag football, play 7-on-7s. And last year and the year before was the first year that Ohio State had a 7th and 8th grade middle school camp, which coincides with RJ Day's development. But you see what it's done for case in point. I mean, we watched RJ Day out there when he had no business as a 7th and 8th grader taking reps, but boy, did he compete. Boy, did he probably feel the pressure around him to look how good these guys are, and this is what I want to be. And so to these young quarterbacks out there, yeah, I mean, Bill and I just watched it over the past 3 years, and that literally culminated this week with the Boston College offer.
And people may not know that, and Dan, you know this for basketball, when you're in 7th and 8th grade, like RJ Day was, you use a different size football than you use in high school. Same thing in basketball. When you're in middle school, you use a different size basketball. You get to high school, you go to a new size basketball. So RJ Day goes to these camps, and he's using a bigger football that he normally uses. It's an adjustment, yet he still went and he still looked good. And he has the one offer now. He's going to get a lot more, folks.
The first time you use that bigger football is the first time you put an ice bag on your arm. First time I ever saw my kid say, why does my arm feel like this? Oh, that bigger football weighs 3 ounces or whatever it is more than the other one times 200 reps. Your arm's feeling it.
Yeah. Having raised a youth quarterback, this is the only thing I would say in all this. Just be careful who you work with and make sure you get some type of fact check on the guy, a background check. I'm not saying you got to run his social security number, but look to see if this person has developed someone else who's been successful that is similar to your child, because they may have existing connections. The real best way to handle recruiting, this is just my opinion, look to see where someone like your kid is going. One basketball coach once said to me, look at the kids in your league, the best players in your kid's league. Where do they go? That's pretty much where you're going to go. If you're an Ohio State caliber football player in the 8th grade, you may already know, okay? But you're talking about literally the top 0.% of kids playing football in the United States right now. It's pretty easy to ultimately identify the best player in your town who's ever played there and whose dad probably was a college athlete, and his mom, if she wasn't, looks like she should have been. That's not what I'm talking about. Those guys are kind of easy to identify. And to tell you the truth now, Mark, and you can disagree with me, the trainers have already identified that dude. You probably have people calling you, okay? That's not what we're talking about. If you got to make the decision now and you think the development is what's going to get your kid there, you got to make sure it's with a reputable operation with a track record. Mark's business is literally built out of people getting screwed over and him wanting to provide a reasonable, not expensive, or some, it used to be free, good Lord. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, you just made a great point. I want to put the finer point in the why to it. Here are some examples of things that go wrong when you have a young quarterback. I think the NFL Flag League puts a ball that's too big and too heavy in little kids' hands too soon for 6-year-olds and 8-year-olds, and they start pushing the ball out, and they start developing sidearms and bad throwing motions. And if you go get a quarterback trainer that doesn't fix that and just reps that in, you've literally given yourself a bad quarterback motion, and you've cemented that muscle memory in because you've repped it so many times. So as I was saying, go get a bunch of reps, go to these camps. Let's first get a trainer that makes sure you have the right motion. Dan Marino told his son, up and out. That's it. Anything else, any more wasted movement than that in your arm, you're in trouble. And if it doesn't look right by 7 or 8 years old, you got to get to a guy that has a reputation of, hey, we'll get your footwork, we'll get your throwing motion, we'll get your elbow in the right place, all those types of things. Because here's the saddest part. I'll go to a college camp junior year, and there'll be 40 quarterbacks, and they'll line up across from each other, and they'll start throwing the ball. And you can stand there from 20 yards away and go, no, 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 because of a bad throwing motion that was locked in at a youth age and no one ever fixed it. And now here's what they tell me. If you're a golfer, you know this. You can change your swing on the range and all that stuff, but you revert under pressure. And in a game, the player will revert to his old motion. And then here come all the old bad flaws. And boy, this is the longest answer for a question ever. You guys shouldn't have asked this to me.
It's a great one. And I'll tell you what, and we'll finish with this. That point is essential. And it's applicable also to your jump shot in basketball. The early development, like you're not supposed to have your kids shooting threes until much later than we allow them to now. And this is a major digression here. So we are 35 minutes in. If you're here, you are a true Bucknutter, and we love you. But hold on a sec. If you guys know Sean Miller and Archie Miller, their dad is considered probably the best trainer of shooters in the Pennsylvania area. Sean was on the Tonight Show at 11 for his dribbling, and Archie led the nation in three-point shooting as a junior. Archie was not allowed to shoot threes in the game until high school. But he pulled me aside, yada, 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 and he said this. Exactly what Mark said. If you do not have the kid's jump shot fixed by the 8th grade, he won't even work with you. He said he tried for 20 years to do it, and exactly what Mark said. When you get pressured, you revert, okay? So you have to have your motion tight. And if you have a flaw in it, basketball is a little bit better because I think there are some guys who have a goofy jump shot that works. Football they will just cross your name off the list. But it's all about that teaching early on, and really it comes down to, are you patient enough to develop your kid the right way, or are you going to try and sacrifice for W's early on and go ego surfing with your kid? Well, we're all a little bit subject to that with our eldest, Mark, so be careful. But just do it the right way. And like I said, please make sure your trainer is reputable. There's a whole business out there of people screwing people over and making serious coin on it. It's worse in basketball than football, but for football, it definitely exists. Okay, quickly. Gentlemen.
Real quick, Dan. Before we go, want to change the subject slightly. This weekend, Bucknutters, there's several games that you want to know about. One is Saturday, where Springfield and Aaron Scott are in Ironton playing your neck of the woods, Dan, DeMatha High School. That's going to be an interesting one. Springfield and Aaron Scott versus DeMatha in Ironton. That is on Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, hold on a second. DeMatha is in the WCAC with Gonzaga and St. John's and all that. DeMatha is the high school of Chase Young, etc. If it's not the best athletic high school in the country, it's in the mix. I'm sorry, Bill. Go ahead.
Sunday, the only game in town, so to speak, nationally televised. We've got Lakewood St. Edward.
Wow.
And the Armstrong brothers hosting, at Lakewood High School, hosting Only Good Counsel. We're going to have Deontay Armstrong at tackle, blocking on Darian Mayo, Clemson commitment at defensive end. We're going to have Devontae Armstrong at guard, going out and blocking on Florida linebacker commitment Aaron Childs. There's going to be so much Division I talent in that game. And again, that's at 1 o'clock on Sunday on ESPN. Bucknutters, that's going to be a great one to tune into. And then the other one I'll be at on Friday night is the rematch. It is Cleveland Glenville coming down here to my neighborhood, playing Olentangy Liberty. Of course, Bryce West, Demarion Witten. That one turned into a really good game last year. I mean, Cleveland Glenville had to hang on for their life to beat Liberty, and you came away from that game. Glenville won, and they were not happy. They were very upset, actually, that they allowed that game to be so close, so to speak. And it'll be interesting to see how it goes this year. Same game, little bit different players, same field, Olden-Tangi Liberty. And I'm guessing that Glenville is going to want to make a statement in that game.
You're getting some real Ohio versus DC bragging rights coming up here. Only good counsel, of course, also from the WCAC. So the home of Mitchell Milton, who I think is going to have a big year. All right, guys, great show. 40 minutes. We've got people on here telling me they want an hour show. I don't think they realize how much you guys make per hour. We're into the second 30 minutes like lawyers here. I'm screwed. But big weekend coming up, and we'll have some great content for you. Keep it locked in here, Bucknutters. Have a good one.